I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Judd Zulgad, the sports dad. I am Phil Mackey, and I got irrationally excited when I saw the Ringer update their top 100 NBA players list.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like over the week. When did this drop? It was like Christmas morning. I saw it, I think, last night in my feed. But June 20th. So I guess it was like Thursday or Friday.
Okay.
And it popped into my feed. I think we should go through this and see where the Timberwolves are and have an Anthony Edwards discussion specifically on this episode.
Sure. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Very down.
And before we do that, our friends at EcoFun are providing all sorts of summertime fun for you. Your summertime fun headquarters, EcoFun Motorsports. There's 2 locations in the Twin Cities, the Forest Lake location on the north edge of the metro, and then Burnsville on the south edge. On the pavement side, we're talking scooters, motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, electric bikes. On the waterfront side, which you can find their watercraft at the Forest Lake location, 2024 Kawasaki and Yamaha, ecofunmotorsports.com, or stop in to one of their 2 locations, like I said, in Forest Lake or Burnsville, your summertime fun headquarters. So let's go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 player in the league, Nikola Jokic, according to The Ringer.
Beat him.
Beat them in 7 games. Yeah.
Steamrolled them.
Mm-hmm. I think there was, and they have Luka Doncic number 2. So we'll stop there for a second.
Yep.
It was all kind of in front of Luka after he dismantled the Timberwolves.
Right.
A Timberwolves team that beat Nikola Jokic.
Right.
A lot of people were ready to give Luka the crown if he could continue forward, win the championship, knock off the Celtics. And instead, he's arguing with officials, still putting up ridiculous numbers. He's out of breath and playing very little defense for the first 3 games. So,
well, and to go back to the Wolves series, you know, he and Kyrie together were so special.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of evaporated.
Yes. Number 3, Giannis. Number 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which is kind of crazy. I mean, he was,
interesting.
If you would have, I'm trying to see where, I think they have the previous year rankings on here.
He's at number 4, huh?
Maybe they don't.
I mean, he's a hell of a player. I'm not taking anything away from him, but that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, there's the full timeline. So he was, okay. So they just updated this. So he was 7th at one point. They had him 4th, but yeah, I mean, he was not regarded as this type of potential maybe 5 years ago. And here he is as this electrifying scorer.
Right.
Okay. Number 5, Jason Tatum, champion Jason Tatum.
Yep.
Number 6, the cantankerous, often injured, but also dominant Joel Embiid. Number 7, the legendary Steph Curry. And coming in at number 8, up from 17th back in January when they put this list together.
Mm-hmm.
So they're updating this multiple times a year. Anthony Edwards, 8th best player in the NBA.
And who runs out the top 10 then?
Kevin Durant, 9.
Okay.
Anthony Davis, 10. I'll even give you, let's go top 20 here.
Sure.
So you can see the context of who Anthony Edwards is now in front of on this list. Jalen Brunson, 11. LeBron James, 12. Devin Booker, 13. Mm-hmm. Kawhi Leonard, when he plays, 14th. Jaylen Brown, 15th. Donovan Mitchell, 16. Victor Wembanyama, 17. Tyrese Halliburton, 18. Jimmy Butler, 19. And then Jamal Murray, 20th best player in the NBA. Just generally, how does that feel? Anthony Edwards, 8th best player in the NBA. Right, wrong? What do you think?
Feels right. And just as he shot up the list from 17 to 8, it feels like there's room to move. You know what? His Olympic experience could change that before we even tip off for the 2024-25 season. Yeah. But it feels right. I guess I have some question about the separation between SGA and Ant a little bit, but I mean, SGA is a hell of a player. So he's done it
a little bit more in the regular season.
Yep. And it's not like, oh boy. I think it's fair. I think it's fair, and I do think that if he dominates and or plays an absolutely key role in the Olympics, that he could shoot up a bit more before the season starts. I think at the end of the day, at his zenith, he's easily a top 5 guy, and he might be top 3.
So that's another exercise. If we were to take, because this is Anthony Edwards' regular season, and the playoffs have influenced his ascension from
Correct.
17th up to 8th.
Yes.
Regular season Anthony Edwards is a few points less per game, just a little bit less efficient, or even a lot less efficient in some ways. Playoff Anthony Edwards, and we have 3 years of sample now, and we have like 25 games of sample size. Playoff Anthony Edwards is almost 30 points a game, efficient, almost 50% from the field or somewhere in that ballpark. He's a distributor. He's grabbing more rebounds. He's playing just completely locked in defense for the majority of the time, right? So if you were to just take playoff Anthony Edwards, and by the way, I agree with this. I think he's a top 10 player. I think it's correct to have him above both of the Suns superstars that he clowned in the first round. Mm-hmm. I think it's right to have him above Anthony Davis, who's always, durability is always a question with him. He's playing alongside LeBron James, which obviously helps him. But if you gave me just playoff Anthony Edwards, I think I have to put him above SGA. This is a hot take. I think I might put him above Tatum and Embiid. Playoff Anthony Edwards, I think, is a top 5 player in this league. And that's the biggest question for him is, can he take playoff Anthony Edwards and upgrade some of his regular season Anthony Edwards credentials? Can he be as locked in as he was in those games in the playoffs against the Nuggets and Suns, especially throughout the regular season, when on a Tuesday night you're playing the Hawks or the Hornets?
You'd like to see that sometimes. I will say this. It's an 82-game season. And I think that there's a difference between going balls to the wall constantly, right? And draining yourself a bit. Like, the one thing I'll give him credit for is Anthony Edwards appreciates and attempts to play in every single game possible, right? Mm-hmm. Do I want him going all out? Like, I am going to go all out at the expense of, oh my God, it's May and I'm worn down. So I think that there's room for the conversation of, where does regular season Ant and playoff Ant fit in? Because Ant has proven in the playoffs he can take his game up. I am not inviting him to become distracted or not care. Yeah. I am saying I think that there is a way to manage your body wisely, especially when you are hell-bent on playing in every game possible. And Ant has definitely some games where it's like, oh boy, it's a bad game, or he didn't show up. Do I see a ton of those games? Like, I don't think we're constantly harping on, well, clearly he could have done more in this game, in this game, and this game. And I do think that there is an interesting discussion here, because Phil, as we know from what you just quoted and talked about, playoff Ant is a thing. Like, it's not a mirage. It's not a, oh man, that nice blip for 2 games. Not to pick on him, but playoff Karl doesn't have that gear. Like, he doesn't get, oh my God. And I'm not going to be offended by the fact that when the most important games come, certain guys can take their game and raise them. So I think this is an interesting discussion. And I could see him jumping Embiid. Embiid's a weird player because he's a marvelous talent. But he's hurt all the time. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't fault guys. Like, I don't want to rip guys for being hurt, but there gets to a point where you're not available, and it just is going to impact your value, right? Tatum, I don't know about, but I do think that this is a fair place for Ant. And I don't know that I need Ant outside of the playoffs to show me a ton more. If it's going to come at the price of, again, by springtime, he's absolutely shot.
Yeah, I think... Well, let's come back to the Embiid thing, because there's a major difference between Ant and Embiid that should be highlighted here. Mm-hmm. I think because you highlighted the difference between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being 4th and Anthony Edwards 8th, and I mean, there's a million different things we could dissect. Both players, they're very different players, they're different ages, but at the end of the day, SGA averages 30 points a game. fairly efficiently, and Anthony Edwards averages 25 and a half, 26 points a game. Mm-hmm. So what can get Anthony Edwards to that 30-point platform where now he's looked at as, throughout the regular season, he's like a scoring title threat? Because he can score at every level, and he's dynamic, and he can pour in, 15, 20 points in a quarter at times. He's explosive. He can take over games. What gets him, right? What gets regular season Ant to that 29, 30, 31 points a game where some of these other guys have been for a long time? The Lukas, right, the SGA the last couple of years, and then Steph Curry obviously he can score however many points he wants for the majority of the last 10 years. On the Embiid front, I don't know if personality factors much into these rankings, but if you're asking me who would I rather have leading my team, I know age is a factor because Embiid's 30 years old, but just in a vacuum, I'll take the dynamic, likable, lift his teammates up, bright beacon personality any day of the week over the Eeyore that Joel Embiid is. The foul-seeking, shoulder-slumping, throws other factors and teammates under the bus before he takes accountability oftentimes. I mean, there's just a certain mopey Eeyore vibe that Joel Embiid gives off. Mm-hmm. And I think it rubs off. I think it creates some weird chemistry. Anthony Edwards is a guy that just breeds great chemistry in a locker room to this point in his career. The old players love him. The young players love him. He's clearly taken over on the court and in the press conference, the post-game press conference table locker room as the spokesperson of the team, the guy that he's not afraid to get on someone who's 5 or 10 years older than he is too, or just take feedback the other way around. So I don't know. Just as a personality, yep, Anthony Edwards is above a couple guys on this list that are above him too. Yeah, he plays almost every game. Here's what the Ringer said, by the way, just in the write-up. Charismatic, quotable superstar in the making who's still harnessing the full breadth of his powers. And then the factors that they sort of highlight are ridiculous upside, athleticism, human highlight. He needs a finisher, though. That's the one thing. He doesn't really have that. He's got that little mid-range bank shot. He'll pull up from 3. He can get to the rim, but in a close game against the Mavericks, you're going back and forth with Luka and Kyrie. Mm-hmm. You're leading by 2 points with 3 minutes to go, and you need at least 2 or 3 buckets. What is his go-to spot on the floor? What's his automatic bucket? What's his wrestling finisher move, right, I guess? What's his stone cold stunner? I think he's still developing some of that stuff.
So I think if we were to, which I'm sure that they will, go back and look at this list and how it might fluctuate by, let's say, January of 2025, okay? I think Ant could definitely jump Steph. Mm-hmm. Steph's an all-timer, but he's not young.
35, yeah.
Yep. I think he could definitely jump Embiid, for sure. I guess the first one I question is Tatum, which I think he could. But I'm just saying, I think he could, if he gets off to a good start, which I think he will, next season, I think there is a real chance that he is probably the highest is 5, very realistically 6, pushing Embiid and Steph Curry down.
And Giannis, some of it's if Giannis is hurt for stretches. I mean, when he's on the court, he's a top 3 player.
Yes.
But he's going to be 30 years old. It's an interesting case there. Okay, let's keep going down this list because there's a bunch of other Timberwolves in the top 100. I want your thoughts on where some of these other guys land. So let's see here. We went through 20. 21 is Zion Williamson. 22, De'Aaron Fox. 23, Paul George. 24, Bam Adebayo. 25, Kyrie Irving. 26, Domantas Sabonis. 27, Damian Lillard. That's one. I mean, he used to be he was 16th back in January. Now they have him down at 27th. Whew.
Sounds nuts, but that trade actually might have hurt the Bucks, not helped them.
Yeah, Drew Holiday.
Drew Holiday's a hell of a player. He's a glue guy too, man. He does a lot of grunt work.
Yes.
In addition to being a really good player.
Yes. 28, Lauri Markkanen. 29, Paolo Banchero. 30, John Morant. Kind of a weird year for him.
Very weird.
He was 21st at one point right before the injury.
Yep.
31, Tyrese Maxey, maybe the most sort of unheralded potentially top player. And then 32, Karl-Anthony Towns. He was 25th back in January. The playoffs essentially knocked him out of the top 30. Even though this was probably his best playoffs.
So the last round.
Yeah.
Because the first two, he defensively did some great things, right?
This write-up is, man, this is a
spot on,
a shiv to the ribs here. The Ringer describes Karl as a giant sharpshooter trying to live up to the player he thinks he is. Wow. And it gives him some credit where credit's due. Towns made the necessary sacrifices to fit these new and improved Timberwolves together. Also, it was quite literally the best of Towns and the worst of Towns this year. You know, helping to shut down the defending champion Denver Nuggets.
Durant.
While being efficient offensively. Yeah, I mean, it's not even mentioned here, but yeah, Durant in the first round. It also hints at Towns could become the most likely candidate for a trade if the financial crunch of the organization needs to be figured out. But, you know, he's kind of gone from being a fringe, maybe top 15, top 20 player at different portions of his career. According to the Ringer now, he's not one of the 30 best players in the NBA. The players right below him, by the way, are Pascal Siakam, Rudy Gobert, 34, Brandon Ingram, 35, Trae Young, 36, Derek White, 37, Drew Holiday, 38, James Harden, 39, and then Jalen Williams of Oklahoma City at 40.
I think that cat ranking is probably fair, though. And look, part of what changes the dynamic in a ranking like this is Ant is such a star. Like, it's now very clear. It's not, hey, it's Ant and Cat. It's like, no, it's Ant, and then, hey, it might be Cat and Gobert. Yeah. You know, I think it comes down to, especially playoff-wise, because Cat in those first two rounds, especially, well, he had a few really good offensive games, but I mean, defensively, it was fantastic at times. But I think it really comes down to consistency. If he ever had that consistency, like if he didn't need to necessarily be a star in the Western Conference Finals, but think about if he had just contributed like he did against Denver and against the Suns. And, you know, let's say offensively, he has two great games, but defensively, he's fantastic. I think it's the consistency. I really do. Because you're not looking for him to have to be a star now. What you're looking for is, can you do what you do best on a consistent, you know, nightly, especially in the playoff spaces?
The shooting slump at the absolute worst time, you know, the first part of that Maverick series.
Yep.
That's the highlight here. And, you know, I was going back and forth with people on social media, you know, flagrant howls. Well, sometimes guys there's just a lid on the hoop. And yeah, like even great players will go through shooting slumps. But if that happens, it can't just be that, oh, I guess there's really no other way for me to contribute offensively. There's got to be some, okay, my 3-point shot's not going down. I'm going to shoot 15 free throws tonight. Or, okay, cool, then I'm just going to, hey, we got some mismatches here. I'm going to take advantage in the paint and use my 7-foot size.
Right.
I think what's really interesting about Cat's career is, number one, he is still, I mean, if you were just plopped down onto planet Earth and didn't know anything about the first 8 years of his career, you would say, boy, the Wolves have the 8th best player in the NBA. And also, it's pretty cool, they have the 32nd and 34th best players in the NBA. Like, that's a good thing for the Timberwolves. Mm-hmm. But the fact that through his prime years, the perception of Cat is that he's gone from maybe being like a fringe, like I said, top 15 player to now being maybe outside the top 30. A guy that earlier in his career, he could pound and use that 7-foot frame. I feel like a lot more in the first few years of his career. It just felt like he was a better paint player and a better scorer around the rim. Now, him adding a 40% 3-point gun in his arsenal is very valuable for this team, but it's just a really interesting career arc that we're sitting here at age 28 and he's this unicorn of a talent that's yet to really put it all together for full regular season, full playoffs, and multiple years in a row. Still valuable, but is he at the price tag? Is he the second guy on a championship team? Like, I don't think he is. Can you still fit him under the salary cap? restrictions if he's the third guy? Like, how do you get the second guy? There's just so many questions about him.
What was the poll? I think Karl had been in the league for a year or two. Was it The Athletic where they polled GMs? And I believe the question was, if you were starting a team right now, was it big men or just overall? And Karl was the top choice.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where it might
that's a
have
top
been
5 player potentially
overall. Like after his first couple of years, go back like 5 or 6 years. Put Karl-Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid, and Nikola Jokic in a bin, all in their early 20s.
Yeah,
it was a legit discussion about who you'd rather have for the next 5 to 10 years. And now, obviously, all three of those guys are sort of spread out.
And Jokic was third at the time
on a lot of people's scorecards. Yeah. So. Okay, let's go through the other Timberwolves here. So, what do they say about Gobert? Just curious. Defensive stalwart with a focused but effective game and a persistently controversial fixture in the NBA discourse. Yeah, I mean, it's fair. But you can't deny that he has been the defensive backbone for a lot of NBA teams that have won 50 games and have gone to the second, third round of the playoffs. I mean, his presence is undeniable at this point. Can you win a championship with him as a supermax player? I mean, remains to be seen.
Yep.
Number 60, and one more thing on Gobert. At 34, he was 42nd in January. His stock has gone up to 34 throughout the second half of the season. Number 65, up from 74 back in January, Jaden McDaniels. Rising talent who changes games like a shutdown cornerback in the NFL.
Interesting.
I love that comparison.
That's a good, very good comp.
And man, if he could go from 10, 12 points a game to not even 20, man, like 17, 18 points, 2-3 more buckets.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see here, up from 85 to 79, Naz Reid. Okay. A less heralded and debated big man capable of putting up numbers to rival his better-known colleagues.
Yeah, when he's hot, he is. There's no question. Plus his 3. I mean, that's the one really weird thing here is you've got 2 big men in Cat and Naz who are incredible on 3-pointers.
Yeah. 2 of the best shooting big men in the entire league. It's crazy. And then the sixth guy, the Wolves have 6 top 100 players, according to the Ringer, up from 93 back in January. Mike Conley, impeccable caretaker point guard who always knows what his team needs.
And he's ranked where?
91st.
91st, okay.
Yep. So 6 Timberwolves in the top 100, ranging from Anthony Edwards, number 8, down to Mike Conley, number 91.
So of all of these names then, Ant, Cat, Gobert, McDaniels, Naz, and Conley, I would say that the most important player to rise, because Ant will, I think, naturally rise, and 8 is damn good. Jaden McDaniels. From
Agreed.
65. Because I think with Cat, we know Cat. Like we could try and change it, right? He could do more here. He could do more there. I don't think Cat has a lot of room to change at this point. He's not young. Yeah. Gobert, certainly the same thing. And in the regular season for sure, the guy is going to bring a defensive mentality that's important. But Jaden McDaniels, to me, like if there is one needle that is clearly going to move here, it's Jaden.
Yeah, could he get up to, so I'm just looking like 10 slots above him. It's guys like Chris Middleton, a key secondary player on a championship team a few years ago.
Yep.
Aaron Gordon, a key sort of third guy on a championship team.
Yep.
OG Anunoby with the Knicks, Darius Garland, Draymond Green, 53. I mean, he's kind of the Wolves version of a Draymond Green. He's a little bit of an enforcer. Mm-hmm. He does some dirty. Now, Draymond Green, rebounder, passer. I mean, he was kind of a pseudo point guard throughout stretches of their championship runs. But could he graduate? Like, I'd love to see him pass Draymond Green. I'd love to see that intersect where Jaden McDaniels becomes a top 50 player, adds some more offense to his game, and catches 34-year-old Draymond coming down the mountain.
I think that's fair. And look, I mean, defensively, he is phenomenal right now. But I think if you can get him, and this probably goes to the Wolves partially and Jaden for sure. Can you get him to join the party on a nightly basis and feel like he's part of it? You know, there's just too many times where it feels like the big kids have the basketball and it's like, just wait for your turn. He's the type of force that I feel like needs to be involved way more consistently with an actual plan of how to involve them.
I think, I think that's part of there, especially if they run it back. Like there's only so many levers you can pull, but that's a big one right there.
I want a mock.
Well, another lever that you can pull, the draft is on Wednesday night. The first round of the draft on a Wednesday night, and then the second round is going to be on Thursday afternoon. And ESPN.com just came out with, I don't know if this is the final iteration, but it's the latest iteration of their mock draft.
Okay.
And I'll spare you. I'm not going to go through the 26 picks above the Timberwolves. I'll just tell you that at pick 27, ESPN.com has the Wolves taking 6'3" Marquette point guard Tyler Kolek.
I want a mock.
One of the oldest players in this draft at 23 and a half years old. Tyler Kolek has interest beginning in the late teens among teams, and will be a potential fit for any team in need of guard depth. He's viewed by many scouts as a player who can step in and help right away. Whether he can leapfrog some of the younger guards on the board remains to be seen. The Wolves, who also have the 37th pick, have come up as a team that could look to trade around in the draft. Adding Kolek as Minnesota looks to move toward contention would shore up its backcourt depth behind 37-year-old Mike Conley.
And they can trade on draft day and night, right?
They can. Yep. And then they also they have a second round here too.
I want a mock.
Where the Wolves with the 37th pick would take 19-year-old Australian shooting guard AJ Johnson. So that'd be more of a developmental situation.
Yeah, which is not surprising.
By the way, Kolek, so 23 years old, because you probably are looking for someone, not that you wouldn't, if there was a 19-year-old stud that just needed some TLC, you'd be best served to just take the best player. But if they wound up with, let's take a guy that played 4 years of college basketball, 3 years at Marquette, who can step in and maybe give you 15 or 20 minutes. So Kolek for Marquette last year under Shaka Smart, 15 points a game, 8 assists, 2 steals, 5 rebounds, 50% from the field, and 40% from 3-point range. So those are his back of the basketball card statistics.
Okay.
I might have saw him play in March Madness a couple times. I don't really know.
I bet they do trade.
Do you think they trade the pick as part of a deal for an established player, or do you think they move around and still draft a player? Finch does not love. I don't think Finch is looking to play a 19-year-old.
No, I agree with that. I feel like they trade and try and get an established guard.
Yeah. By the way, I have a list. Maybe we can do this tomorrow or Wednesday. I think we're going to be pumping out at least 3 to 4 episodes this week of Flagrant Howls. But there's a bunch of interesting lists of free agents, bargain bin hunting free agents that the Wolves could go after.
Sure.
It's a couple fun names. So we'll splash those names around this week too, because free agency opens up at the end of the week. You got the draft on
June 30th,
Wednesday and Thursday, and then free agency opens
crazy.
up.
It's crazy. Yeah, you know what? I bet they trade around, but I bet they try and acquire a veteran guard because, one, they've got young players to develop who they didn't play already. So, why add one? Yeah. And then to your point about Finch, if you combine the fact that Finch does not seem to like and or trust playing young players with where this team is at in its evolution, does it really make sense to bring in a guy who's going to probably get buried, or does it make sense to make a trade, get a veteran guard? Morris probably at that point in time does not come back, which I don't think would be some terrible thing. And you're still like this team is very much, as we've discussed, in the window. So do you really want to give Finch another chip that he's probably I don't know about that.
I mean, on paper, I kind of like the idea of a 22, 23-year-old player that can jump right in. because some of the guys he's not playing are like 19-year-old Leonard Miller, He's there, and there's a huge difference between a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old who's played 120 games of high-level college basketball, played in the NCAA tournament. So I do think he would trust it because he trusts 23-year-olds in the playoffs. He's trusting Jaden McDaniels. He's trusting Naz Reid and Anthony Edwards. So I do think he would trust, in this case, if they drafted Kolek. If Kolek can play, I think he would get on the court. But we'll see. We'll see what they do on Wednesday night. There he is, the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, Phil Mackey. This is Flagrant Howls, a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.